I had all these poems ready to read for tonight, and then I looked at the TV today and realized that today is sort of a special day in American history. We'll see if John Roberts actually knows what the United States Constitution is and what's in it. I have my doubts, but we'll see. Anyway, for the last, let me look at this.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah. For the last 2 years, I have been writing a series of sonnets inspired by the President of the United States. And I actually had another poem, which was just called Trump, that was published a year or so ago in Black Renaissance, which is a magazine published in New York. And I was going to read that and a series of other poems, but today, since today's the opening of the impeachment trial, I thought I'd read this. And bear with me, it's a very long series of sonnets. And I'll just pause between them. The title is On an Imperial Order Gasping for Air. And it has as an epigraph a quotation, many of you know it, from Constantine Cavafy. Those people were a kind of solution. It's from his poem, Waiting for the Barbarians. Who told you that guy there is a devil? A bright, chill breeze tells the truth of winter, bringing to mind, please note, a relevant and related question. I see you live in a hamlet near my hometown. Do you like how the state's governor a while back stepped in to protect the moneylenders and stripped democracy from the people there and named a band of unelected bureaucrats to manage the city? If so, please explain. Also, should we listen to the war planners, the finance wizards, and invade? Say how you know that man there. The devil, the poor love, and the rich fear is so bad that we must become bullies. I have to say, as a parenthesis also, that, now I forgot what I was going to say. Let me continue, then I'll figure it out later. It'll become clear who the characters in this poem are as we go along. The dealer taught them to fear their neighbors will bring pestilence, disease, and strange songs. They bring crime, they bring drugs, they bring rapists, they bring dancing, they bring colors, and they talk that weird multisyllabic talk like yours, just different, like your talk is to them. They brought Jacqueline, and we think of Phyllis, a thing wrapped in a blanket, 8 years old perhaps, to be sold on the docks like dry goods, sold for £1 in the corner store, like a box of tea. Party, anyone? Phyllis would grow to write poems to freedom, and she would almost cease to be a thing. Jacqueline died in a cage at the border. This is also, I should say, a little more didactic than my usual fare, so bear with me, but there might be a laugh or two in it. Stone in handcuffs, Stone indicted, poor man. He was just doing a friend a favor. Let's peddle what little integrity the country has left. No one will notice. We'll be saving the nation from that old crone. No one will think that we're doing wrong. After all, it's just data, old letters we found by accident rummaging through her trash. At least that's what we'll say when asked. Even if it's all lies, theft, and deceit, it'll be in a just cause. We'll be bringing back the good old days. Don't you remember? A white man's country, a housewife in every home, and a jockey in every front yard. And one can wonder how it happened that suddenly we've forgotten all that we've ever known. For the first time in many years, winter rain arrived in the foothills. The birds now sing with a happier lilt. We await a fecund spring, bright and green. Yet over the hill, in the faraway capital, adventurers plot mischief in our name. Black gold is again to be bartered in a game that calls greed freedom, in a cosmology that trades honor for idiocy. Once again, the fool. To the adventurer, the one next door is a mark. To us, she is a neighbor. Take the last time we were out together. You said perfection was the best of all virtues. I said we love flowers even if they are not perfect. In matters of statecraft, perfection is always elusive. Hear the ancient poet and learn the truth. Virtue is feeble while vice is dreadful. And we can add, imperfection is your inheritance. Rain can both grant and take life. When the sky clears and new hope arrives, we plant seed and wait for life to renew. It is a deep vice to junk this process. Yet one guy's delusion of perfection is all it takes to wreck a pretty thing. The propertied and moneyed have always sought to jail those who commit the crime of socialism. It can be an awful thing housing the sick and healing the homeless, wanting to talk instead of bully, wanting to say, you can't poison folks for a few dollars more just to please your friends, like that foul air outbreak down the street last year. And who ever heard of water dirtied on purpose? Just so we can pay you for the right to drink. Just think of it. Quote, nobody's got the right to clean water, unquote. And just when everybody's wondering what is meant by the word socialism. The quotation, by the way, is from, I think, an executive of Nestle. The only emergency we've got is that racism is no longer the law. Hate, when you're just muttering or shouting, is your right until it turns to assault. Quote, if the President of the United States does it, it is not illegal, unquote, said the mad crook that went out on his ear. And when the quote, emergency, unquote, you declared becomes assault against unarmed families fleeing death, and when you carry it out with a lie, bringing shame on our contract and the flag for which it stands, when you spit on compassion so you can reap profit from unholy deals, what then is legal? This one, again, these are all sonnets. This one is for Yamiche Alcindor, Butterfly McQueen, and Lynn Patton. Yamiche Alcindor is the PBS NewsHour correspondent. Butterfly McQueen is a movie actress. And Lynn Patton is the third figure in this poem. She asked him, you might remember this anecdote, by the way. She asked him if he liked fascists, and he called her a racist. Then his mouthpiece pulled a plantation-era show and tell in public, cameras rolling. We waited for him to tell his example to do a jig, but the example just stood there, mute. We've seen this sort of thing before, and they too got paid. Those trying to hold on to the world that once was are modeling really weird stuff, some rotted memories. But even Thelma McQueen got to talk. She was a big star way back in the day. Now Yamiche puts the lead dealer on the spot. Lynn, we love you. We wish you happiness. This is all too damn philosophical. The hot angelic city has now cooled, and in the north, created fire and floods reshaped the landscape. Our hubris, pride, and misdirected desire plunder the forests. Last year's fire burned 40 days and 40 nights. Now the winter storms. Cloud cover brings cold, and the hint of sun, when peeking through, brings sweat. This is normal. The borderline between the seasons has blurred. Here the origin of our fear, blurry insight of anxious hope, and with luck, an abundantly fecund, colorful spring, the eternal as we wait, breathing. More than 7 people were burned alive one night not long ago. As kids, they told us, quote, only you, unquote, could prevent it. 24 more were swept away in the afternoon wind. We remember the flood of a few years back that killed hundreds of those we loved, whose ancestors were chattel. The dealer, as expected, denies all. It is early spring, and the baby oranges are bright on the trees. It will rain here today, and the next day, and the day after that. And though they say we have no reason to fear, we are jittery. Being terrorized by the rain is new. The dealer thinks we gave him the job. We didn't. It was an error. Who forced it on us? I would say we were asleep, but the wag in the corner would shout me down. The trouble was mythical, like that scene in Gone with the Wind. You know the one. 2 guys in the buggy, dressed to the nines, a white driver, his black passenger singing, hurrah, hurrah. Bottom rail on top this time, as another one put it. And they've carried that anger with them to this day. Right on cue, he came and said the guy we liked was a fake, a foreigner who came from a land of dung. After all, he'd know. It was not much more than a quarter minute, but there lay the outline of the whole trouble, and the tale of love, though pretty, was at once distortion, delusion, and direction. And why not every man was the trouble, as the future rode through the rabble, through the rubble, toward the town. And it came to pass that Madonna and Scalawag would wed to fulfill the myth, to be loved and reviled by all. He came then to your front gate to sow hate among you, to make you know hero as villain, Madonna as crone. It was all just a myth. Even her name, a plain thing, lost its real world meaning. The guy's got no friends. Even those that have got to be his friend can't be his friend. Nobody wants nobody that wants to be his friend to be their friend. People that want to be his friend march through the streets in brown shirts shouting, "You will not replace us." Friendly to him are people that put his name in manifestos before going out to commit mass murder. Why these people want to be his friend is a question worth asking, one would think. The problem is finding somebody that's friendly enough to ask him. I mean, the public has asked him that already, but the guy's got no friends. He doesn't want you to be his friend. Sure, he wants you to like him, the way you once liked the face on that poster in your room. It's not just the click he wants, it's fandom. He does not want your friendship. I mean, would you want him as your friend? It's not a requirement. But he has no friends and wants no friends, so who's he working for? Good question. The days grow longer and finer. Through the fragrant air, the soft and mellow breeze brings warbling in the leaves. And look at Roy Orbison, singing Blue Bayou with friends like Springsteen, Raitt, Lang, and Costello. The Cliff Notes version exonerates him. And we are surprised that you are surprised. Otherwise, the day is bright and calm. The trees are singing with wokeness. A mating pair passes through the blue, over the green, out of the corner of my eye, before going on with their busy day. That jolt you feel is a machine, interrupting the day as it has always unfolded. Our gadgets have a way of intervening uninvited. So much noise, so much clatter, so much junk to clutter the mind. To truly know, we must look at the sky and trust what we see there, or go hungry. The father and the son are fleeing their home because the father has, quote, been threatened by gangs, unquote. What can we do to help Hondurans and their problem with gangs? Oh, I forgot. The dealer has just junked Honduras, punished the people for being threatened by gangs and in their fright rushing into our arms for safety. But that was then. We have moved on. The story of Celine Dion is beautiful and inspiring in its own way. The story of Lori Lightfoot is beautiful and inspiring in its own way. We can do something to help Hondurans fleeing gangs. Open our arms. This is how we get stuck, trying to figure out how to respond. The dealer's hired help says of putting children in cages, not that way. So he fires her. It was not because putting in cages is wrong. It was not because snatching, the great teen poet's great word that told us how she arrived on our shores in a blanket. It was not because the help thought snatching a child to throw him or her in a cage is wrong. Not that way, she said helplessly. This is all done in public in our name. And we are expected to react to this kind of thing, perhaps with a nice poem. Warmth and seasonal rain brings a pleasant, pretty neighbor. He plays in the yard outside our kitchen window. Let me start that over, I'm sorry. Warmth and seasonal rain brings a pheasant, a pretty neighbor. He plays in the yard outside our kitchen window. Like the bird, we are short-term visitors and sometime residents. The city, with its sweet and rancid odors, greets our occasional experimental explorations of its neoliberal changing landscape. What are we to make of this? The Fordist era ended. Our old town ran out of cash. They nearly sold every piece of art. Our post-Easter dinner walk was joined by a red-breasted robin strolling dully along, a jewel in the balmy evening. That was a poem about Detroit, where we have a house and we visit as often as we can. It has now become easy as pie to list the crimes. The silence he paid for, the gobs of cash he has laundered, how he used our trust to put foreign money in his own pocket while taking dollars out of ours. We could add making hate his favorite policy, but that's not illegal. You could call it almost traditional. For instance, an ex-tenant once showed a film in the parlor. Redemption was its theme. Guys in white costumes rode horses and saved damsels. The bad guys didn't wear black, but in their skins. And the tenant said something about history and lightning. He was wrong. You know his mind is made of mush. It's so hard to follow the guy. One day he wants to destroy the world. The next day he wants to kiss and make up. But he's got a problem even there, since groping strangers in public places is his idea of fun. And he thinks he's a grown-up. Look at that photo of a woman he hurt. That smile is like a death ray. She's giving that "get this creep's hands off of me" glare. Like if she made even the tiniest gesture, he'd want to start making out. He does this sort of thing when talking war, too. Just grab him and kiss him is his idea of romance. It's also his idea of diplomacy. This is a true headline, the first line of this. A human body falls from the sky and lands in the garden. Tanks will roll through the capital of the USA's Freedom Day party. I won't be there. He's jailing people who are pursuing liberty, the right to life, to happiness. The day after tanks roll down the DC streets, he's throwing out millions of American families. Who can ex-Poles lobby for? That's called news. How about lobby for the sick, not for the profit makers? In my head, an echo, that DC guy from back in the day. To the slave, what, he said, is the 4th of July? We'll get back to you. From Seneca Falls to now, they've worked toward restoration. one small hurdle at a time, where she could go, who she could see, what she could own, how to adorn, and for whom, what she could say, and to whom. To possess her own joy without permission was a crime. They tended beauty in the garden of the Muses before it was snatched and put up for sale. And then the path to restoration came to a crossroads. The return to reverence beckoned. But, he said, just grab them. And the others went along. Paris is melting. Love for sale is more than just an old song. The rogue still thinks the world is his to run. For once a cop told the truth, as the old moon waned and the new had yet to emerge. Think of it. Our lore is full of lying lawmen, but here's one only ostriches will find false. It has come to this, and what do we know? The old dealer traded our chits away for a bowl of gruel. He has filled his pockets with our trust, stolen and laden with grime. He let thieves into our cupboard, shared the loot, and bragged that he'd do it again. All of this is public, yet we still can't decide whether to get rid of him. It is midsummer, and the noisy night cricket stuck in the garage echoes. Mass murder in the streets. Last week's news had children in cages, the police snatching people from their homes, their jobs, their families. A cop got off for choking their father to death. Then some families went back to school shopping. It was date night. I have never been to El Paso. I have been close to Dayton, though. A guy drove 700 miles to kill families, but not before posting a manifesto. He killed a woman they said was his girlfriend, plus lots of other good people. We can choose to connect the dots, or we can choose to fail to do so. Families are grieving. Families are tired. And now a break for a grimoire. In our lingo, most pairs are like I am, but not mixed in the head like Paul, except for the word I am. Hunting for the origin will just make you mad. It's not Beelzebub's apartment, though the blind poet prattling on in holy madness gave instruction on using the line. That's why the 10 will work as long as we keep cool about it. The old guy tells us butterflies are indifferent to objects as long as beauty is free at each stop along the way. They don't much care for style either. It's all smooth and pretty. Free beauty, he said, demands no concept. White racism at war snatched 680 people from their co-workers and families. 2 days before that, it killed over 30 people in cold blood in 2 separate cities in one summer day. The innocence, he said, is what makes the crime. It's the tell. White supremacy killed some 30 people in 2 different towns in one day. It shot them down in public. The executioners bragged about their plans to kill brown people. 2 days later, white supremacy at war seized hundreds in a plot to throw people out of the United States for yearning to be free. The walrus-styled guy balked when the dealer invited the hosts of the gang that hit us over dinner and a chat. Of course, no one here likes their thuggish ways. The nightmare still lingers. Most of us were just finishing our first cup of coffee. It was a morning like this one, calm and not too warm, a bright sun full of promise. Then came fire, ash, the city covered with the debris of human flesh. No birds called. The warmongering walrus wanted to ennoble the thugs. The dealer would have them over for an anniversary dinner. This is the state of play right now. The old song, I'm almost done. The old song talks about the days growing shorter. In the Capitol, the gang of thieves and their would-be tyrant leader in the executive suites are certainly feeling the chill. Their shadows are thicker, darker, and growing longer as they walk the suspicious, jealous, craven halls. The dealer's Nero-esque rants and raves are still pretty frightening, but the tribunes of the people are building the legal case against him. The teachers, healers, lawyers, and ironsmiths count and catalog his crimes. The soldiers, merchants, and barkeeps are working as the fall leaves turn red and gold. Fire and flood, windstorms, earthquakes, and heat waves. This is how we live now. The rich leave the hot cities for the flood-born lowlands, even as they deny that we are all complicit actors in the unfolding disaster. What can you and I go without? Single-use plastics, a healer when we need one, food for the soul. Meanwhile, the dealer keeps telling us to rake the leaves as he glibly prattles about buying countries, deploying our kids to protect the oil, and shaking the Ukrainian down, bullying him to sign up as his creep servant. As a movie, it's a dud. Today was the jury's second public meeting. The dealer, shouting from his own garlanded gallery, showed us his best scoundrel self. The woman hater cursed the witness. She's a bad worker. I might fire her, he hinted, committing a new crime, like a Law and Order TV show villain. In the show, he'd get Jack's shouting wrath. Our Adam's a cooler type, but the dealer's scoundrel was out of his mind. Meanwhile, Stone is guilty as hell, the latest of the dealer's gangbangers to go down. Marie Yovanovitch, our heroine, went home to her family. This is the last one. I don't actually know how long this thing's going to be. It's now at 31. We'll see if I keep being inspired. I write these things in the middle of the night. A line appears, and then I have to keep going with it. So this is 31. The people have finally indicted him after the grand jury debated all day in public. He watched, ranted, and raved during the whole thing. The people are charging abuse and obstruction. What few friends he has left say abuse is a dumb charge, but our whole thing started when a bunch of guys wrote a paper about Nutty George's instances of abuse. So there's that. And the dealer said, "You're not getting nothing from nobody." For that, we slammed him with obstruction. Will he get a fair trial? It's the one thing we all want to know. Meanwhile, the forecast is cool winds and rain. Thank you. Thank you. Mm.